20 minutes after 8. When you're single, it seems everyone wants to give you advice, especially if it's advice to buy their product. Our media analyst, Jeff Greenfield, is here with some examples. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. One of the biggest changes in American life over the last 20 years is the huge jump in the number of Americans living alone. Now, no business pays more attention to changes in living patterns than the advertising community. If you want to sell a product, you got to know the territory. So if more of us are on our own, commercials are bound to reflect that new reality.
When I got my own place, my folks were sure I'd never have a good meal again. Well, why worry? I just got myself some Stouffer's.
For example, this ad for Stouffer's frozen foods argues that you can get a nutritious meal that's also easy to prepare. Just the thing for the single woman on the go.
So I'm ready in just 15 minutes, which is great when you're in a hurry. So if you're on your own, get yourself some Stouffer's and tell your folks not to worry.
Surprise! So, isn't this great? I got my own kitchen, my own bedroom.
And your very own ring around the collar.
Ring around the collar.
This whisk commercial is aimed not at the mother homemaker, but at the young single male, new to the world of wash day woes.
No more surprise visits.
And no more ring around the collar.
The increased number of single parents has also opened a new market.
When I had to start making investment decisions on my own, I really did a lot of investigating.
Nuveen Tax-Free Securities aims this commercial squarely at the woman who, through divorce or widowhood, is now responsible for her family's future. But if responsibility is a theme of the singles ads, there's still a large appetite for that old standby, romance.
I think I'm going to cry.
Why?
I'm so happy.
You mean you've never had a guy tell you he loved you before?
Not the right guy.
For instance, this ad for Lancer's Wine identifies the traditional drink of love with a promise of real commitment. Now, these ads suggest the difficulty of appealing to the increasing number of single Americans. On the one hand, products need to be positioned to stress their usefulness in helping customers lead independent lives. On the other hand, one of the strongest appeals to single people is still the promise that they may not be single forever. Kathy?
Thanks, Jeff. We're going to find out how some singles react to those promises now. Madeleine Pickard is a program consultant for a blood bank in the Chicago area, and Robert Masello is a writer from New York. And good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Madeleine, Jeff just said that the appeal of these things is that singles will not be single forever. What do you think about that?
I think it's true. I think that advertising suggests, well, singles is okay. It's all right to be single for a while, but you don't want to be single forever. I think we all are looking for commitment.
What do you think about that, Robert?
I think most of these commercials are pitching the idea that you're not going to be single that night.
Really?
I mean, that you may find company by using the product. I also think, though, that most of those commercials that we just saw, for instance, are sort of aimed in their allure and in their general appeal more to women. The Stouffer's commercial, just for instance. I think they got to make a hungry man Stouffer's if they want men to eat that. That's aimed, I think, at like 100-pound women who are even then watching their weight a little bit, because Stouffer's, I think they taste terrific, really. But on the other hand, you got to stack them up 3 or 4 to even make a dent.
And again, I don't think it has anything to do with being single. Stouffer's is a great product, and if you got married, you'd have less time on your hands. You'd probably use the product more.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about romance, because that has always seemed to sell products. Let's look at an ad right now that seems to sell romance.
Good night.
I had fun.
It's really cold.
I could make some coffee.
Times like these are made for taster's choice.
The best tasting coffee is the freshest tasting coffee. And every cup of Taster's Choice is fresh because it's freeze-dried fresh. Taster's Choice.
Well, Madeleine, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a little hokey, but I like the idea that a commercial can say, hey, these two people are on a date. We're kind of turning full circle again, and these people are traditional people, a little nervous, first-time date. And what are they going to do? They're going to sit down and have a cup of coffee. That could happen. I believe it.
Do you think this would make a single want to buy Taster's Choice?
Could be, very well. If they're not into making their own coffee, they probably would not mind drinking Taster's Choice.
How about you, Rob?
I can't say that I'm too crazy about that commercial. I just think it's awfully overt and blatant in its pandering appeal to that very notion. I think that if I were going to celebrate an intimate moment or the end of an evening, I might be much more likely to do it with champagne or caviar or, for that matter, a double cheese pizza with everything on it. Instant coffee would not be the first thing that would spring to my mind.
What a romantic guy you are, Robert. What kind of singles ads do you think are really appealing to single men today?
Well, the first that springs to mind is an obvious case. There's a health club that advertises, and I think the funny thing about that commercial is that it's a very sultry blonde with a bandana and a tight T-shirt, and she stands there talking about the health club for about a minute and never once mentions Nautilus equipment, barbells, swimming pools. She just says, this is the kind of place where I go, and this is the kind of place where I go to meet people who like people like me. It's like that sort of appeal. You think, I don't know that that would ever make me join the health club, but it probably makes me, watch more television.
You don't leave the room when the commercial's on.
Yeah, you
anyway.
do pay attention.
Robert, we're learning so much about you this morning. Madeleine, as women are becoming single or staying single longer these days, they're financially independent, they're on their own. What do you think, how do you think women are portrayed in these ads?
As submissive people still. Unfortunately, I think so in many ways. I think the Lancers commercial is a perfect example, Kathy, of what they're doing, because she's not saying I love you back. Why didn't she say I love you back? And she's saying, well, not the right one. Well, how many toads did she have to kiss, for heaven's sakes? I don't like that. Well, that's what they're saying. She's had a hard time up until that very moment. I don't like that.
But that's real life. I've had some toads in my life too, Madeleine.
Well, it's realistic, but it's sad. I want to see us as a little bit more victorious.
What do you think of that, Robert?
Well, I think she's right. I don't even know if it's submissive, but I think that they are certainly passive, the women in those commercials. And yes, to a certain extent, you could say that romance is back in fashion, and then that it should appeal to men for the same reason. But again, in a commercial like that, I mean, it's kind of obvious, and it's very heavy-handed, I think.
Okay, if you could say to a top ad executive right now, this is the kind of commercial I want to see, and I don't mean the blonde in the T-shirt. You've already said that. What kind of a commercial would you want to see made?
Well, I think where both people are a little bit more reasonable, where it's a little less sentimental, and if it wanted to appeal to men, I think it would have to be, I'd like to think it's be a little bit wittier, and even to a certain extent, focus a little bit more on the virtues of the product instead of just the kind of sentimental halo that they try to create around most of the commercials that we just saw.
Same with you?
Yeah, I mean, get the lady to talk a little bit about herself and, what she does and so on.
And I think, I'm sorry, Lancers ought to be very careful, too, because if they keep pitching these commercials, they're going to convince men that to order a bottle of Lancers is to be ready to pop the question.
Oh, right. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Good Morning America continues after more news and weather. Stay with us.